Shedeur Sanders thing, he's back in the news, obviously. Again, you and I played quarterback. We understand the job description. This guy doesn't understand it. And I just told Jeff, I broke it down in totality. Not only is your head coach your daddy, but he's the daddy of the quarterback. He's not the left guard. He's not the backup corner. He's not the fucking fullback. He's the quarterback. He's your son. And for the daddy and the head coach to not get in front of this kid and say, enough is enough, shut the fuck up, and do what Tom Brady told you to do. Go fucking build your resume the right way and start learning how to be an NFL quarterback. Blows my mind. I'm still kind of just struggling with the fact that he continues to be out there. A kid that was I think a walk-on quarterback was asked to leave the program. 3.5 GPA kid, great character kid. He just wasn't good enough. They said, you got to go. He came on a podcast recently and said this, if you hadn't seen it.
Then Shedeur, do you feel like you would have been able to start, or do you think it still wouldn't have been no opportunity to?
Let's put it this way. Remove the last name and ask the question again.
Yeah.
He said if he didn't have the Sanders name, it's kind of like Bronny James. I guess if he didn't have the name, would he even be in the draft? But listen, I don't believe this kid's as good as Shedeur, but Shedeur came and addressed him, Shaun. I learned something. Sometimes you have to take the high road. But that's not the high road, to Jeff's point. You shouldn't have said shit. And then Gavin Cool, the kid, came back and said, what high road? What are you talking about? Spare me. Go ahead, Shaun. Let it go.
Now, I don't have this negative, angry energy that JB has towards the Sanders family and everything going on in Colorado. I will say this. My dad said, don't argue with fools, because from a distance, people can't tell who is who. That would be my advice to Shedeur Sanders. That's beneath you. That's below you. Obviously, the kid is upset, as he should be, because I still say this about college. And he might have been a walk-on if I got my information right, but if you have a kid in your program that's doing everything right academically, he's on time, even if he's not the actual talent that you thought he was going to be, I don't think you should be allowed to make those kids leave. Because you brought them there, whether you gave them a scholarship or you let them walk on, they got your okay at the beginning. So I have a fundamental issue with that, but this is just bitter.
Because
the one thing the one thing you can't say about Shedeur is he can't play. Now, he might not be as good as he thinks he is or projects to be, but the kid is talented and he can play.
Let me dive into something that I had to do when I had to bench my starter for doing certain things on Netflix. Malik Henry, obviously, a 5-star kid, number 1 quarterback out of high school, goes to Florida State, was actually about to start at Florida State as a freshman, and I had to bench him. And then this is my conversation with the freshman that I had to take the red shirt away from. This is a conversation that we had.
Your ass, man. I'm just kidding. Hey, I'm starting you tomorrow.
All right.
You all right?
Yes, sir.
You just swallowed real hard and shit.
I wasn't expecting it.
That's good. So look, I'm starting you tomorrow. I'm not changing the game plan either. I'm just letting you know. Go have fun. Call your dad.
That's a young Peyton Manning, baby. Your time to shine, right? Shit. Thank you.
Hi, Jake. He may go have a fucking heart attack.
Hey, he actually played well in the bowl game, man. That was for a fucking bowl game, by the way, Shaun. It takes a lot of nuts to take your starter and say, nah, I'm going to go with a true freshman that really hasn't played much. But that kid was a Tennessee kid who was a great high school player, just fucking managed the game to perfection. Because he's a character kid. That's the quarter. That is what you want from your quarterback. If he's not the uber talented kid, guess what? At least I know he's going to do right. And he did right, and we ran the ball for 400 fucking yards, FYI. He made some great throws, though, that were big third-down ball throws that kept us in the game, and we ended up winning and pulling away. But listen, I just think certain times you got to sit your starter down, which they actually showed that with Malik as well later. But I said, dog, I'm not starting you. You're not doing the right things. This is the quarterback, Shaun. Like, I just don't understand why you continue to think you're supposed to be in the limelight in a negative connotation. Even though you may not think it's negative, overall, everyone's looking at you. I don't know. That's in my
Let me ask you a question. And first of all, shout out to you. because you're one of the few people, myself is in this group as well, that's been able to get a whole room full of quarterbacks better. Not just the starter, but the backup, the third string, the freshman, red shirt. And I think that's what coaching the quarterback position is about. Teaching those guys how to compete, instilling confidence, getting them prepared for when it's their turn.
And getting talented guys to stay and not transfer, right?
That's right.
Because you got that day's over, right, Shaun? Like, that's a great point. Like, we used to recruit 3 and 4 guys that were all 5 stars and keep them on our roster and have great competition in the room, make it fun, practice hard, get them scholarships without even having to play because they ripped our practice squad or whatever. We don't get that no more. So go ahead.
The question I have regarding Shedeur is, I mean, this is kind of like the first ever. Like, we've never seen a college quarterback that might be a bigger celebrity as a brand than he actually is as just a football player. Like, this is a unique deal with Shedeur. I mean, they've got national KFC commercials, and what's the one with him and Shy? Like, this is normally stuff attached to a professional athlete. Like, this kind of brand power, like, I mean, we've never seen this. I mean, the kid got a Cybertruck. The kid got a Phantom. I mean, this is a different road we're going down. So I'm going to be more reactive than proactive as far as what I feel about, like, some of the stuff he does, because at the end of the day, Jeff, it's going to come down to how he performs. If he balls out, then guess what? He'll be in a position to where if he doesn't like the team with the number 1 pick, he can say, don't pick me, I'm not going there. If he doesn't ball out, then guess what? If you think his dart's coming his way right now, boy, multiply that by 1,000 because they'll be coming from everywhere.
But Shaun, at the end of the day, I mean, you're a quarterback. You guys both know way more about football than I do. I'm looking at the individual, the kid, and saying, is he really the best quarterback? Like,
so Jeff, look at it from this perspective.
Goes into his name, just like LeBron James Jr. It's the same thing.
So look at it from this perspective. Last year, when you saw the mock drafts before the season, nobody had Jaden Daniels as a second quarterback coming off the board. Every consensus, it was Caleb Williams or Drake May. Caleb Williams or Drake May. Jaden was nowhere in that conversation. That's what I mean about you got to play the season out. Because the kid from Georgia, Carson Beck, he could go out and have a big-time year and be the number 1 pick. Hell, Shedeur could go out and have a big-time year and be the number 1 pick. So, I mean, there's still some movement as far as where they're going to get drafted, you know, as far as.
But what I'm saying is, though, at the end of the day, he is always going to be on the highest pedestal. He is cemented, unless he has a horrifically bad season. They're still just going to say, well, it's only college. You know, he's, you know, will it really matter at the end of the day? Because
I think Deion has set the bar so high. If for some reason Shedeur is drafted in the mid to late first round, that'll be viewed as failure. I mean, in the grand scheme of things, it's not. But with Deion saying they're both top 5 picks, if they don't go top 5, then, you know, that's viewed as they didn't meet expectations. And so, you know, depending on how you're looking at it.
I mean, not for nothing. The quarterback class next year is, again, I mean, it's Drew Aller. It's
you don't know that yet, Jeff. You don't know that. With all the transferring, I'm telling you, there are going to be some kids that pop off and come out of nowhere. Sort of like a Kenny Pickett a couple years back. Got that extra year at Pittsburgh, and him and Addison balled out. All of a sudden, he was the only quarterback in the first round.
I'll tell you what, they just have to strengthen that. That offensive line was horrific at Colorado. It's got to be better. It was really bad. It's one of the worst in the country. I
don't think you can build a great offensive line through the transfer portal.
Right.
I think you got to recruit your way to that group.
Hey, Shaun, I want to ask you something, though. As you know, the quarterback position as well as anyone, and when I look at it, and he took 72 sacks at Jackson State. Now, listen, I had a horrific O-line, great dudes in college, and I was slow, but I had great feet in the pocket, and I knew where to go with it or get rid of it. I look at this kid to break him down and say, you've taken 130-plus sacks from Jackson State to Colorado. I look at the question I guess I'm going to ask you is, when do you look at the QB and say, look, dog, we don't always have good O-lines, and we got to make shit happen. We got to make sure the ball is out of there. A sack is just a detrimental factor when it comes to QB play, especially on the road. We know it's a crowd factor. Gets the opposing crowd involved on the road if you get sacked. And if you don't, and if you get sacked at home, It's a crowd depleter. It quiets the crowd and the momentum. When do you look at the queue and say, hey, dog, 140 sacks in 2 years is not all on the O-line? I just have that take as a guy that actually had to live in this world. Do you?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of stuff. I think some of it's coordinator, some of it's scheme, some of it's he holds the ball too long. Some of it's they're not as talented as people think. Like, they didn't have a wide receiver drafted this year. I recruited Xavier Weaver. I think he's a really good player. But he was by far, in my opinion, their best wide receiver, not named Travis Hunter. And so now losing Xavier, have they upgraded the receiver position? But, you know, when you're evaluating Shedeur, he has great size. I think he has a high football IQ. I think he has a good arm. I think where his limitations come is the athleticism part. He's not a plus athlete. He's not a guy that's going to run around and extend plays. And I think he has to come to grips with that and figure out, I've got to beat people with my mind and my arm talent, because very rarely is his physical ability going to be the difference maker. Now, he's not immobile, but he's also not a guy that's going to run around and win the game running the football.
That's my point, though. He's not Caleb Williams athletically. He's not Josh Allen, Lamar, Kyler Murray. He's not athletically a freak. He's a guy that can ad-lib and run, similar to Mahomes, right? He can ad-lib, extend plays with his feet, but he's not a guy that's going to, you know, Justin Fields it. He's not that guy. His arm is mediocre at best, in my opinion. I think he's kind of a little bit of an elongated delivery. I think his feet get outside of his framework. I think he's when he is inaccurate, it's because his base is way too wide. It's outside his fucking shoulders, and I think he gets overextended. His feet get so far wide he can't get his back foot with them, and the balls are all over the place. All that's QB talk to all the casual fans out there. But that all has to do with, like, you look at the great, Shaun, that we've all seen. Joe Burrow took a Cincinnati Bengal team to a Super Bowl, was a couple plays away from winning one, and got sacked more than any NFL quarterback in the history that year. And then he turns around and gets sacked again the next year, and they're a play away from beating Kansas City again in Kansas City. That is, in my opinion, making shit happen. Like, you just got to figure it out. That's the elite. Tom Brady had a couple years where he got blasted and got the ball out on time and understood where it went. He knew his clock in his head, got the ball out, made it happen. I don't see that with Shedeur, and I agree with you. It could be a multitude of things. Play calling, all that shit. But your daddy hired the play caller, and this is the second time he's hired a guy. So when does that excuse go out the window?
So here's what's interesting. I think Shedeur has to be graded, JB, based on what he does this upcoming season. I do think for Deion and Shedeur, and I mean, there was an adjustment. I mean, as much as I love what Deion did at Jackson State, the level of competition at Colorado is going to be different than what they played at Jackson State. Also at Jackson State, they showed up with the best team most Saturdays, whereas at Colorado, they didn't. So I think some of that, things were moving a little faster than before for Shedeur. I don't think he was used to, you know, having to kind of make up for some deficiencies they had by getting the ball out quicker. You know, if I was coaching him, the one thing that I would be hammering in his head, you never go broke making a profit, right? If we can't protect for all this down the field stuff, then look, let's have great eye discipline. Let's get the ball checked down accurately. We got athletes, get the ball to them in space, let them make some people miss, and let's put drives together like that. Obviously, he was back there trying to make the big play, and they just, to me, don't have the personnel to do that, at least not last year. We'll see what kind of adjustments they make this year. He brought in an offensive coordinator. Was it Pat Shermer? Is who I think is there. So you would think it'll be a more NFL-style pass protection scheme, maybe more checks at the line. We'll see what they look like. But I think this is the year that we judge how much Shedeur has grown.